Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Iron Woman. We only have special guests, and Dale Weeks is in Minneapolis. And my question is just, where is your passion?
Thank you. My real passion, if you want to call it that, it's been that way for 30, 40 years since I've been in business, and I've worked also in the public sector, is just a continual focus on some sense of what excellence is. I was fortunate in my graduate program here in Minnesota many, many years ago. I met an individual through his readings by the name of John Gardner, who's written extensively about excellence, whether it's excellence in the classroom, whether that's excellence in business, whether it's excellence in government. And so I've sort of retained that. And then in the 70s and 80s, when U.S. business community was facing competition from the Japanese, this thing got going called quality. And then it evolved into performance excellence and all kinds of different labels and TQM and all kinds of stuff. But the real fundamental things behind it is, how do you achieve excellence in some sense, to sustain an organization? My initial employment was in some very well-known organizations like Xerox and General Mills. Now, Xerox was formed in the late 50s as the only company in the United States that made copiers. If you're the monopoly, you don't have to manage very well. I went to work for the company, and they said it's the best managed company in the industry. So it wasn't managed very well, and it eventually got to the point of almost going out of business. That whole sense of how do you retain excellence, but as driven by something that sounds simple, which is a focus from the outside in on the customer. Who is your customer? Do you really know, and are you providing product and the service for the customer? It comes first. I guess those two things, the focus on the customer and focus on excellence. And I've worked for close to 20 years with similar kind of approach toward the public sector. Who is your customer in the public sector? I work for tax agency. Tax agency, you could say we're a monopoly and you pay your taxes or you don't. If not, we'll come after you and fine you. We took a different approach in the agencies I work for that says, you are paying us. You are the customer. How do you build a customer or citizen-focused public sector organization? And I had the opportunity to work for some and work with others in terms of best practices across the world of those that are performing better than the private sector. Many people hold the position that the private sector knows everything to do and excellence is there, but the public sector is bad. I can give you very sustainable examples across the world where the public sector has performed much better in terms of outcomes than the private sector. That whole sense of really knowing what excellence is and how do you provide the leadership to make it happen.
Excellence in the workplace, I think, is for me top notch, but then also how to motivate the people to become excellent and provide the excellence that we need.
That's correct. It's how you make it what's in everybody's thought process when they come to work. You don't have a top-down command and control organization where the person at the top says, we're going to do this. And you got to build that into the fabric of the organization of every employee. And when you look at the ones that have done it and are doing that, they're there. But there may be 5-10%, and the other 90% are still struggling on how to do it.
And we have to improve and innovate all the time. And Dale and I, we know each other from EdSnaps. Tell us about EdSnaps and your involvement.
Well, my involvement at EdSnaps started back when I met Dr. C in Tallahassee, Florida. She, at the time, this would have been 2014, 15, she was doing help for students at the elementary school level. And so she invited me to come as a speaker where she was trying to inculcate STEM related stuff in some of her classes there. And then I also got involved beyond the classroom as a speaker. She and I both worked on something called Helping Small Businesses. There was a program there that was involved with helping people that were looking for their next job opportunity. And they provided a program. It was funded by the federal government to bring people together in groups of 8 or 10, form a company, and actually do something close to those of us that have heard Shark Tank. We did similar kind of stuff. It was called Startup Quest. We had over a 3-year period, we had probably several hundred. She and I served as mentors for these teams of 8 or 10 people to, number one, design a business idea where we go to educational institutions where we were there, Florida State, others that would have an idea coming out of a research function. We'd form a business around that, assign officers, and then write a business plan and then present the business plan to the judges involved, and we get ranked, and there was sort of first, second, and third place. I got to know her there, and then when she left Tallahassee and began to form EdSnaps in 2017, she would ask me to be on the board of advisors for EdSnaps because she was continuing this on a much broader basis beyond Tallahassee to New York City, Manhattan, and then now she's doing it on a global basis. And right now, in the last year or so, I've been working with several of her students. We're developing a global STEM dashboard because many educational institutions in the United States and elsewhere, when you look at STEM and the number of graduates we have, either at the high school level or at the college level, we're not at the level of where we need to be as a country. There's like 5 or 10% of the graduates are in the U.S. I had a son. Dr. C has had a daughter. You go and you look in the classroom at the college level and the graduate level. Where are they coming from? China, India, Europe, whatever. U.S. graduates are not focusing on science tech. They're not doing it. What we've done is we've put together, and we're at the point of getting a prototype out for a STEM dashboard. I can go into a K through 12 school, find out where they are, and then bring in best practices from within that state, if it happened to be New York State, or within other countries. How are they doing in Switzerland? How are they doing in India? And build a sense of commitment. You can accelerate the growth of STEM graduates on a U.S. basis, if not beyond that. We're developing a dashboard similar to what you saw 2 years ago. There was no STEM dashboard or a COVID-19 dashboard. Today, you can go out and you can find just about every dashboard you want in terms of COVID. We're going to be doing the same thing for STEM graduates, K through 12 or college. Provide that and then build communities of practice. I can bring K through 12 educators together. I can bring together deans of colleges that are willing and ready for this to say, gee, I only have 8% or whatever the number of my graduates today. I need to grow that. In the context of, as you mentioned earlier, the SDGs, we only got 8 or 10 years and people are saying, where's the planet going to be in terms of climate change? We got to have more people that get the essence of what science is and what we've seen under COVID. A lot of people are, they don't know what science is.
It's not so much that we focus only on climate change, but it's about education and STEM education, empowering women and embracing women. We need that dashboard. We need to see that sooner than later, and we need to work towards that.
Because even where I sit here in Minnesota, they just a week ago with a report by the State Department of Education that looked at the K through 12 education system across the state and said they don't have any metric that track. They have some, but where should they be going? What's their performance target? Because under COVID and everything else, they've had to reorient some of their priorities. But still, the kids in the classroom is where it's important. And you got to find a way to say, how are you doing? Where do you want? And where are the best practices? Because a lot of this data is available publicly. It's not hidden somewhere. I mean, you can go to France, you can go to Finland, you can go to and find out what are they doing. It's just a matter of bringing that context and perspective into the system so that you're looking at it and saying it's like you started to talk about if you're going to run in the Olympics, you got to know who's doing a 100-yard dash in 9.5 seconds. You got to know that. You don't say, oh, I can run better than the guy down here in Iowa. But how does that compare to, you got to know what your global standard is.
And the competition, we just need to be in the known. And the data is there, but we don't consume it correct. And when we talk about excellence in sports, what can we learn from sports that we can bring into the business? That's always my interest. And you sent me an interesting article about Olympians. They win the gold medal, and maybe they have a day when they're not at the gold medal standard, but they can step out of their misery in a way and keep going.
A lot of this, I read stuff because I've done jogging and stuff. I go on. Just recently, they had Tokyo Marathon. I watched those.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to see what are they doing. Not that I'm going to replicate, but you get some kind of sense of what that really exceptional performance is. Setting a goal, whether it's goal A, B, or C, or whatever it happens to be. There's some commonalities in terms of setting a target, remaining steadfast. If you're having a bad day, recognize that's what it is. Every day doesn't happen the same, even if you're at the top, and all of those kinds of things that relate to setting performance. And then in business, it's not the short term, it's having a vision. Many organizations do not have a meaningful vision. Or many countries don't have a vision of what do you want? I want to be the best, and I want to run a marathon in 2 hours or less, like Kipchoge did. And you read that stuff at the beginning of that article. It said Roger Bannister, 1950s, barely ran a mile in over 4 minutes. He thought he was dead because people said it's not possible. There's all kinds of commonalities, and you listen to people. How do you set a goal? What does it mean in its sport? And how do you set a equally challenging? And it's there if you're willing to be open.
That's what it is. You say it's creating a vision, setting a goal.
A humble CEO that says, no, it's that same thing. It's not, I made it to the top. We've had our fill of those. I can give you names of people that charismatic leader, and he can, I can move mountains and all of that. That's not it. If you've got a team together, it's all of those coming together toward a common vision. That applies to individuals. It also applies to organizations. Many don't have that. And that's part of what I'm doing with this EdSnaps dashboard, which is, what's our vision? Why are we doing it? People are, Dale, that's too difficult. Why would you do that? Our world is facing an existential survival question. If you follow whatever, you can't just sit there and say, we can reach over that barrier.
That's exactly what it is, if you're willing to do that. I have one question for you. I don't know if you can answer this. What is the legacy that you want to leave? You have so many things that you have accomplished. You're involved in many things. What is your vision? What is the legacy that you want to leave?
Well, I've thought about that off and on. One of them is that at least I contributed to, it may go back, there's a quote from the Boy Scouts of, if you go into a camping area, you leave the camp better, equal to or better than when you left, when you came in. Are we doing that as a society? Probably on a global basis, some areas. Maybe Switzerland is. I like it when I go there, but I mean, you've lived there, so I'm just an outside visitor. Yeah. That I at least contributed, because a lot of what I do these days, I invest my own time, my money. I do it pro bono. Sometimes I get paid, but it's more of the most difficult issue. Education. Ooh, people say, oh, that's a tough thing. That I was at least willing to address some of the tougher issues that our society faced, and hopefully got some benefits. And I created a sense of more hope, because I've been an eternal optimist. My father for a long time was one. He would say he'd go to work, he'd talk to people at the drinking fountain or whatever, and you get all of the complainers. Oh, isn't it? He said, no, turn that around and say, okay, find your area. Or his quote would be to us as children, don't just do something, stand there. Or turn it the other way. Don't just stand there, do something. I've sort of targeted education would be one, some public sector excellence is another. I worked for 20 some years in the public sector. That I was willing to focus on some of the harder issues of our society to sustain it for next generation to see children going up and they're not learning.
We need to step into your footsteps. I think that's what I meant. We need to think broader and we need to include everybody. You also mentioned some people say it's difficult. You said it, if we change the language, it is possible. It's not difficult, it's different.
And you got to be willing to face that on a day-to-day basis and get up because you have a commitment to some broader target rather than just get more money or more material or whatever that happens to be. Each person has to define that for themselves. But and it's mostly driven in my case because I've been to other cultures. You see what people are, or now you see what's happening in Ukraine and you go, the world is repeating itself. And then you say, shouldn't learning, shouldn't education be progressive rather than regressive? We're doing the same thing we did 50 or 70 or 80 years ago. Find ways to get more people on that avenue.
I'm looking forward to that dashboard. So thank you so much for your very wise words. Thank you so much, Dale, for a wonderful conversation. What are you taking away? Take it from the Iron Woman. We have episodes every Monday, every Wednesday. There is something for everybody, from entrepreneurs, people in education, coaches, authors, you name it, we have it. Thank you for your support.